Get out. We don't serve animals here.
I'm a paying customer.
Come at paying gratis. You're a cockroach in my kitchen. A black cockroach.
Then call the health department. I'm eating my food.
Oh!
That's for people. Not colored street trash.
Pick that up.
My town, my rules.
Something fell from the man's jacket and hit the floor. A gold badge. The waitress saw it first. The tray slipped from her hands. Plates shattered across the tiles. Then Dawson looked down. The color drained from his face. What happened next cost him his badge, his freedom, and everything he spent 30 years building. Now, before we get to that moment, let me take you back to the beginning. Harlan Falls, Georgia. Population 4,800. One traffic light. One high school. One diner everybody eats at. And one sheriff who runs the whole thing like it's his personal kingdom. The kind of town where everybody waves at you on the street, but not everybody means it. The courthouse sat in the middle of town square, red brick and white columns, with a Confederate monument out front that the county council voted 6-1 to keep. The streets were clean. The lawns were trimmed. Everything looked polite on the surface. But underneath, Harlan Falls had a problem it didn't like to talk about. Sheriff Earl Dawson had run unopposed for 3 consecutive terms. His campaign signs were still nailed to telephone poles year-round, even when there was no election. His face smiled down from a billboard at the county line. Big white letters. Sheriff Dawson keeps Harlan safe. Safe for who? Well, that depended on what you looked like. The town was roughly 60% white, 40% black. But if you looked at the county government, the school board, the planning commission, white faces. All of them. Every seat. Every vote. 2 civil rights complaints had been filed with the Department of Justice in the past 18 months. Both from black residents. Both describing the same thing. Getting pulled over for no reason. Searched without a warrant. Talked to like they were less than human. Those 2 complaints were about to bring a stranger to town. But nobody in Harlan Falls knew that yet. Miles Anderson pulled into the gravel parking lot of Pemberton's Diner on a Tuesday morning in a rented Chevy Malibu, engine ticking as it cooled, dust settling on the windshield. He stepped out and stretched, mid-40s, tall, lean build, dark polo shirt, jeans, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked like a college professor on a road trip, maybe a writer researching a book. The kind of man you'd walk past without a second thought. That was the point. What nobody in Harlan Falls could see, what nothing about Miles Anderson would ever tell you, was the 12 years he'd spent inside the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Specializing in one thing, investigating law enforcement departments that abused their power. Before the DOJ, 4 years as an Army JAG officer. Before that, Howard University Law School, top 10% of his class. He'd reviewed dashcam footage from over 200 police departments across the country. He'd testified before congressional subcommittees. He'd sat across the table from sheriffs, police chiefs, and commissioners who thought their badge made them God. Nothing about his face ever gave any of that away. That was his greatest weapon. He checked his phone. A text from his wife, Nadine. "Be safe. Love you." He sent back a thumbs-up emoji and slipped the phone in his back pocket. He wore a dark canvas jacket even though the morning was already warm. Inside the left inner pocket, a leather bifold wallet. Gold badge, federal credentials. The letters DOJ printed in block font next to his photograph. He didn't take the jacket off. He didn't plan to be here long. Just breakfast, just observation. Just one more small town on a long list of small towns. He pushed through the glass door of Pemberton's Diner. The bell above it jingled once. Vinyl booths, Formica counters, a jukebox in the corner that still worked if you fed it quarters. The air smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee and something sweet. Maybe cinnamon rolls, maybe just nostalgia. Ray Pemberton sat at the register, 70-something years old, reading the Harlan Falls Gazette through a pair of bifocals that had seen better decades. He looked up when the bell jingled, saw Miles, and looked back down. Not unfriendly, not friendly either. Miles took a booth near the window, set his notebook on the table, folded his hands. Brenda Holloway appeared within 30 seconds, mid-50s, apron tied at the waist, a pen behind her ear and a coffee pot in her hand like it was a natural extension of her arm. "Morning, hun. Coffee?" "Please." She poured without measuring, perfect level. 22 years of muscle memory. "Kitchen's got biscuits and gravy running real good today. Short stack solid, too." Short stack sounds perfect. She scribbled the order and smiled. Warm. Real. The kind of smile that came from someone who treated every person at every table the same way. Miles noticed a photograph tucked into the front pocket of her apron. A little boy, maybe 3 years old, light brown skin, wild curly hair, laughing at the camera. Next to him, a young woman, Brenda's daughter, same eyes. "That your grandson?" Brenda looked down at the photo like she'd forgotten it was there. Her whole face softened. "That's my Caleb, 3.5, thinks he's the boss of the whole world." Miles smiled. "Sounds about right for 3. She laughed and headed to the kitchen. Miles opened his notebook and started writing. A man in a trucker cap at the counter glanced over, not hostile, just watching. The way people in small towns watch anything unfamiliar. Miles didn't look up. He'd been in dozens of towns like Harlan Falls. He knew the rhythm. He knew the quiet. He knew what lived underneath it. He just didn't know it was about to walk through the door. The glass door swung open hard enough to rattle the frame. Sheriff Earl Dawson walked into Pemberton's diner like he walked into every room. Chest first, chin up, boots hitting the floor like they were making a point with every step. Mid-50s. Barrel-chested. Mirrored aviators still on even though the sun was behind him. His uniform pressed so crisp it could have cut paper. Badge polished to a mirror shine. Belt loaded. Sidearm, taser, handcuffs, radio, everything on display. Everything deliberate. Behind him, Deputy Colt Sheffer slipped through the door like a shadow. Younger, thinner. The kind of man who never entered a room before his boss did. Dawson stopped just inside the door and scanned the room. Slow, left to right, the way a man checks his property. His photo hung behind the register, him and Ray Pemberton, arms around each other at last year's charity fish fry, smiling like old friends, because they were. His gaze swept past the trucker at the counter, past the retirees, past the young mother and her daughter. Then it landed on Miles, the only black man in the diner. Dawson's jaw tightened. Something shifted in his posture. Something small. Something anyone who wasn't watching closely would miss. But Brenda saw it. She'd been seeing it for years. He unhooked his aviators from his face, folded them, tucked them into his breast pocket, and he walked toward Miles's booth with the slow, deliberate stride of a man who had never once in his life been told no. "Morning." It wasn't a greeting, it was an opening move. Miles looked up from his notebook. "Morning, Sheriff. Don't think I've seen you around here before." "Just passing through." Dawson tilted his head, repeated the words slowly like they tasted wrong in his mouth. "Passing through. To where exactly?" "Nowhere in particular. Stop for breakfast." Dawson looked at the half-eaten short stack, the coffee, the notebook. Then he looked at Miles, studied him, up and down, the way you'd size up something you weren't sure belonged. He put both hands on the edge of the booth, leaned in. "Let's find out. ID. One word, not a request, a command." Miles reached slowly into his back pocket, pulled out his regular wallet, slid his Georgia driver's license across the table. Dawson picked it up, held it at arm's length like it might be contaminated, read it out loud, theatrically, making sure the whole diner could hear. "Miles Anderson, Atlanta, Georgia." He looked at Miles over the top of the license, the way a man looks at something that confirms his suspicion. Atlanta, long way from home. Not that far. Far enough. Dawson turned the license over, looked at the back like there might be a secret hidden there. "What's your business in my county, Mr. Anderson?" "No business. Just breakfast."
Just breakfast.
Dawson smiled. Not a real smile, the kind of smile that comes before something bad. "Funny thing, people don't drive 2 hours from Atlanta to eat pancakes in Harlan Falls. Not unless they've got a reason." The sign said open. I was hungry. That's my reason. Dawson didn't respond. He unclipped his radio, keyed the mic. "Dispatch, this is Dawson. Run a license for me." He read the number off slow and deliberate. Then he clipped the radio back and stared at Miles while they waited. The whole diner was listening now. Forks down, coffee cooling, every ear tuned to that booth like a radio frequency. Static crackled. The dispatcher's voice came back. "License is clean, Sheriff. No warrants, no priors, no citations." Nothing. Not even a parking ticket. Dawson's eye twitched. Just barely. The clean record didn't satisfy him. It irritated him, like it was proof Miles was hiding something deeper. He noticed the notebook, open, handwriting visible. "What's that?" "Personal notes." Personal notes. Dawson reached for it. Miles placed his hand flat on the page, calm, firm, not aggressive, just unmovable. "That's personal property, Sheriff." The air in the diner changed. You could feel it, like the barometric pressure dropped 10 points in a single second. Brenda's hand froze on the coffee pot. Ray Pemberton slowly put down his newspaper. The trucker at the counter stopped chewing mid-bite. Dawson leaned in close enough for Miles to smell the tobacco on his breath. "Let me explain how things work in Harlan Falls, Mr. Anderson. When I ask a question, you answer. When I reach for something, you hand it over." He tapped the table with one thick finger. "This is my town, my rules. And right now you're sitting in my town, eating in my diner, and writing in a notebook you don't want me to see." He paused. "That don't sit right with me. I have a right to—" "Don't!" Dawson held up one finger. "Don't talk to me about rights. People like you love that word, rights, like it means something different when it comes out of your mouth." He straightened up. "You want to know what your rights are in Harlan Falls? Whatever I say they are, that's your rights." Miles said nothing, just looked at him, steady. That silence, that absolute unbreakable calm, was the worst thing Miles could have done, because it told Dawson something he couldn't handle. This man wasn't afraid of him. Dawson stepped back from the booth, unclipped his radio again. "Barnes, this is Dawson. Get to Pemberton's, now!" He didn't explain why, didn't need to. In Harlan Falls, when the sheriff called, you came. While he waited, Dawson circled the booth. Slow, hands on his belt, like a predator walking the perimeter of a cage. He spoke to Sheffer, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. That was the point. It was always the point.
Funny how they always got an excuse, isn't it, Sheffer?
"Yes, sir. Atlanta sends us their trash and expects us to smile about it." "Yes, sir. Every time, same story, different face." Miles stared at his notebook. Didn't react, didn't flinch. The front door opened. Deputy Todd Barnes walked in. Young, 25, maybe 26, 2 years on the force. He stepped inside and immediately read the room. The tension, the silence, the 3 uniforms surrounding one man at a booth. His face changed, just for a second. Something between confusion and discomfort. Then he put it away and stood by the door. 3 officers, 1 unarmed black man eating pancakes. The older couple in the corner booth quietly flagged Brenda, paid in cash, left without finishing their food. Didn't look back. A mother at the window table pulled her daughter close, whispered something. The little girl stopped coloring. Nobody said a word. Nobody challenged Dawson. Nobody stood up. The silence filled the room like water rising in a tank. "On your feet!" Miles looked up. "Am I being detained?" "You're being whatever I say you're being. Stand up, hands on the table." Miles set his pen down, closed his notebook, stood slowly, placed both palms flat on the formica, fingers spread. Dawson moved behind him, started the pat-down. Pockets first, then waistband, then down both legs to the ankles. Rough, deliberate, every movement exaggerated for the audience. His hand stopped at Miles's left side, the inner jacket pocket. Something in there, rectangular, leather. He pressed it through the fabric, squeezed it once, then grunted and moved on. He didn't open it, didn't ask about it, just filed it away as a wallet or a phone case and kept going. That was the moment. Right there. If Earl Dawson had opened that pocket, if he had pulled out that leather bifold and flipped it open, everything that happened next would have been different. But he didn't, because he wasn't looking for evidence. He was looking for a performance. Dawson stepped back, made a show of sniffing the air, tilted his head, sniffed again. Deputy Sheffer. He said it like he was asking a question he already knew the answer to. You smell that?
Sheffer straightened up.
Sir? Marijuana. I smell marijuana. Dawson looked at Miles, then at Sheffer. You smell it? Sheffer nodded, didn't hesitate. Yes, sir, I do. There was no marijuana, not on Miles, not in the diner, not in the parking lot. Miles Anderson had never consumed marijuana in his life. Dawson turned to the diner, raised his voice. A campaign speech voice, a man of the people voice. For the safety of everyone in this establishment, I am detaining this individual on suspicion of a controlled substance. He said it like he was saving lives, like he was standing between civilization and chaos, like the man with the notebook and the short stack was a danger to every person in that room. A few heads nodded along, most just stared. Miles hadn't moved, hands still flat on the table, face unchanged. His silence was louder than anything in that diner, and it drove Earl Dawson absolutely crazy. Dawson wasn't done, not even close. He pulled a chair from the nearest table and dragged it across the floor. The legs screeched against the tile. He set it backward across from Miles's booth, sat down and rested both forearms on the backrest like this was a casual conversation between old friends. It wasn't. Empty your pockets. Miles looked at him. I've already been patted down, Sheriff, and now you're going to empty your pockets. Everything. On the table, right now. Miles held his gaze for a long second. Then he reached into his jeans, one item at a time. Regular wallet, cell phone, car keys, a pen. Set each one on the formica like pieces on a chessboard.
Dawson picked up the wallet first.
Opened it. Thumbed through it like he was flipping through a magazine at a dentist's office. Then he pulled out the cash, held it up, counted it out loud. Bill by bill, slowly, making sure the whole diner could see. 20, 40, 60, 100. He kept going. 200, 260, 300, 340. He fanned the bills out on the table. $340. He looked at Miles, then at the diner, then back at Miles. That's a whole lot of walking around money for a man who's just passing through for breakfast. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Drug money. That's what he wanted everyone to think. Miles said nothing. Dawson picked up the phone, turned it over in his hand, pressed the power button. The lock screen lit up. Passcode. No. Excuse me? You need a warrant for that, Sheriff. The word warrant landed in the room like a slap. Dawson's jaw clenched. A vein in his temple pulsed. He set the phone down. Carefully. The way a man sets something down when what he really wants to do is throw it. Warrant. He repeated the word like it was a joke. You sound like a man who watches too much television, Mr. Anderson. I sound like a man who knows his rights. There's that word again. Rights. Dawson leaned forward on the chair. His voice dropped. Quiet now. But the quiet was worse than the loud. Let me ask you something. You think rights are going to help you in here? You think some piece of paper somewhere is going to walk through that door and save you? He gestured around the diner. Look around. Who's coming for you? Nobody in this room knows who you are. Nobody in this town knows your name. You're just another face from Atlanta that nobody's going to ask about. He let that sit. That's the thing about people like you. You disappear, and the world keeps spinning. Nobody notices. Nobody cares. Miles looked at him, steady, unblinking. "Are you finished, Sheriff?"
Dawson stared at him.
Something flickered behind his eyes. Not anger, something worse. Confusion. Because every tool he had, the badge, the gun, the voice, the threats, none of it was working. The man across from him was sitting in a diner booth with his pockets emptied and 3 cops surrounding him, and he looked like he was the calmest person in the room. That was unacceptable. Dawson stood up, kicked the chair aside, pointed at Barnes by the door. "Barnes, go search his vehicle. Chevy Malibu in the lot. Rental plates." Barnes shifted on his feet. "Sheriff, do we have a warrant for that?" "I've got probable cause. Marijuana odor. That is my warrant." Dawson's voice hardened. "Go, now." Barnes stood there 1 second too long. His eyes moved to Miles, then back to Dawson, then to the floor. He walked out. The minutes stretched.
Dawson poured himself a cup of coffee from behind the counter like he owned the place.
Nodded at Ray Pemberton. "Just keeping things safe, Ray. Business as usual." Pemberton nodded back but wouldn't make eye contact. His hand trembled slightly as he turned the page of his newspaper. He hadn't read a word in 20 minutes.
Dawson carried the coffee back toward Miles.
Took a sip, stood over him, looking down. The full weight of the uniform, the badge, the belt, all of it pressing down on a man who hadn't done a single thing wrong. The diner had gone past quiet. It was something else now, something heavier. The kind of silence that crawls into your chest and sits there.
The jukebox played something soft and slow.
An old country ballad, gentle guitar, a woman's voice singing about love lost on some dusty highway. Beautiful music. The worst possible soundtrack for what was happening in that room. A man at the counter, mid-60s, John Deere cap, calloused hands, watched the whole thing. His jaw was tight, his fork was still. He looked like a man who wanted to say something but had spent his whole life learning not to.
Brenda stood behind the counter,
Wiping the same spot over and over. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She kept looking at Miles, then looking away, then looking back. Miles caught her eye for just a second, and he gave her the smallest nod. Almost nothing, a quarter-inch movement, as if to say, "It's going to be okay." She didn't understand it, not yet, but something about it made her eyes sting.
Dawson set his coffee on Miles's table,
right next to the emptied wallet, right next to the cash fanned out for everyone to see. "You know the last time someone from Atlanta came through here trying to be clever?" Miles didn't answer.
"He left in the back of my cruiser.
Didn't come back." Dawson sat on the edge of the booth across from Miles, crossed his arms. "See, you might think because you put on a nice polo and drive a clean rental car that makes you somebody. That you can sit here with your little notebook and your smart mouth and your $300 and pretend like you belong." He leaned in.
But I look at you and I see exactly what everybody in this room sees.
Just another stray that wandered too far from where he came from. Miles looked at him, the same steady gaze he'd had since the moment Dawson walked in. "Is that a threat, Sheriff?" "That's a fact." The front door opened. Barnes walked in, dust on his knees from searching under seats. Every head turned. Dawson straightened up. "Well?"
Barnes stood by the door.
He looked like a man delivering news he wished he didn't have. "Car's clean, Sheriff. Nothing. Nothing. No drugs, no weapons, no stolen property." Barnes paused. "Laptop, suitcase, file folder. That's it." Dawson's face went tight. The jaw, the temples, the corners of his eyes, everything clenched at once. He had been counting on finding something, anything, to justify the last 30 minutes of what he'd done to this man in front of a room full of witnesses.
And there was nothing.
"Then he's smart about it." Barnes looked at the floor. Then quietly, almost a whisper, "Sheriff, there's nothing there. Maybe we should just let him—" "When I want your opinion, Barnes," Dawson's voice cracked across the room like a whip, "I'll beat it out of you." Barnes stepped back, his mouth closed. He was done talking. The diner was watching, every single person. And in that silence, something shifted. Not in the room, in Dawson. Because Earl Dawson was now standing in the middle of his own town, in front of his own people, with 3 deputies and a detained man, and he had nothing. No drugs, no weapons, no record, no probable cause, no crime, absolutely nothing. And everyone knew it. But letting Miles go, walking back that performance, admitting he was wrong, in front of the counter where his photo hung, in the diner where he was supposed to be the hero, that was something Earl Dawson could not do. His ego wouldn't let him. It never had. So he did what men like him always do when the ground starts disappearing under their feet. He doubled down. Stand up, turn around, hands behind your back. Miles stayed seated. You found nothing. No drugs, no weapons. Clean record, clean car. You have no grounds, Sheriff. I have all the grounds I need. I'm the law in this county, and I say you're under arrest. For what? For whatever I decide. Dawson stepped forward. Now stand up, before I stand you up myself. Miles looked at him for a long time. Then he stood, slowly, pushed himself up from the booth with both hands, straightened his back, and looked Earl Dawson directly in the eyes. Not angry, not scared. Something else entirely. Something Dawson couldn't read and couldn't break. You're making a mistake, Sheriff. Only mistake I see is you walking into my town. Dawson spun Miles around, grabbed both wrists, slammed him face down on the table. The notebook skidded off the edge. The pen rolled to the floor. The coffee cup tipped and spilled across the formica, dripping onto the vinyl seat. Cuffs came out, metal on skin. Click, click, locked tight. My town, my rules. Dawson pulled him upright by the collar. And you just bought yourself the worst day of your life. He shoved Miles toward the door, hard. Miles stumbled forward. The jacket jerked open from the force, and something flew out of the inner pocket. A leather bifold wallet hit the tile floor, slid 3 feet across the aisle, landed face up under the fluorescent light. Gold badge, federal credentials, 3 letters in block font. Miles saw it fall. His eyes tracked it for half a second. Then he looked straight ahead. His face didn't change, not one muscle. Dawson didn't see it. He was behind Miles, hand on his collar, already pushing him toward the door. Eyes forward, back to the badge on the floor. It sat there, on the white tile, catching the light, waiting. Brenda Holloway hadn't moved from behind the counter in 30 minutes, hadn't spoken, hadn't done anything except watch a man get torn apart in the place where she'd spent 22 years pouring coffee and calling strangers hun. Now Dawson was dragging him toward the door. Boots on tile, cuffs clinking. She did what she always did when the world got too loud. She worked. Muscle memory. Hands reaching for plates, stacking cups, loading the tray. 6 plates, 2 coffee mugs, heavy. She balanced it on her forearm the way she'd done 10,000 times, turned toward the kitchen, past the booth where Miles had been sitting, and looked down. A leather bifold wallet on the floor, flipped open. Gold badge catching the fluorescent light like a small sun on white tile. A credentials card, a photograph. The same man Dawson had just cuffed like a criminal. 3 letters in block font, D-O-J. She didn't feel the tray tilt. She didn't feel her fingers go slack. 6 plates, 2 mugs, everything hit the floor at once. Ceramic exploding on tile. A mug shattered into 3 pieces. A plate spun on its edge before breaking in half. Coffee splashed in a dark wave across the aisle. Every head turned. Dawson stopped 3 feet from the door, turned around. "What the hell, Brenda? Clean that!" He saw her face. His voice died. She was standing in a field of broken ceramic with her hands still shaped around a tray that wasn't there. Eyes locked on the floor. Dawson followed her gaze, past the shattered plates, to the gold badge on the tile. He read the 3 letters. His hand dropped from Miles's collar. Confusion, because the letters didn't belong here, not on the man he just called a cockroach. Realization, because suddenly the calm made sense, the silence made sense, all of it. Then terror, pure career-ending terror. Miles straightened his back, turned to face Dawson. Same calm, same steady eyes, but carrying something different now.
Authority.
Sheriff Dawson, my name is Miles Anderson, Senior Investigator, United States Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. Nobody moved. I came to Harlan Falls to investigate 2 formal complaints of unconstitutional stops and detentions by your department. Pause. I didn't expect to become Exhibit A, but here we are. The diner erupted in tiny reactions. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Sheffer backed into the wall. Barnes closed his eyes. Pemberton took off his glasses and set them down like a man watching his world rearrange. And Dawson, 3 terms, billboard on the highway, most powerful man in the county, had nothing to say. Miles looked at the cuffs. "Take these off." Dawson's hands shook as he found the keyhole. Click, click. The metal fell away. Brenda picked up the badge wallet, photographed it, walked behind the counter and dialed the number on the DOJ card. "My name is Brenda Holloway. A sheriff in Harlan Falls just detained a federal investigator in my diner. I watched the whole thing." Then she looked at Dawson. For 22 years, she'd served him coffee and looked the other way. Not anymore. Miles walked back to his booth, stepped over the broken plates, sat down, pulled his notebook toward him, started writing. Dawson watched him write. Every insult, every threat, every slur, being documented in ink by a federal investigator in the booth where he'd called that man a cockroach. And there was nothing Earl Dawson could do about it. Nobody moved first. That was the thing. For a full 60 seconds after Miles sat back down, nobody in Pemberton's diner knew what to do. Not the deputies, not the customers, not Ray Pemberton. And especially not Earl Dawson.
He just stood there.
Middle of the floor, hands at his sides. The same spot where he dragged a man in handcuffs past a dozen silent faces not 5 minutes ago. Then he moved. He walked toward Miles's booth. Fast. Not angry fast. Desperate fast. The walk of a man trying to catch something that had already fallen off a cliff.
"Now hold on."
His voice was different. The boom was gone. The campaign speech tone was gone. What was left sounded thin, cracked at the edges. We can talk about this." Miles didn't look up. His pen kept moving. "I have nothing to say to you, Sheriff. My attorneys will." "Attorneys? Now wait a minute!" Dawson put both hands on the edge of the booth. "This was a misunderstanding, a routine stop. You gotta see it from my side."
"Your side."
Miles stopped writing, looked up. "Your side is on camera, Sheriff." He pointed with his pen. Above the register, a small security camera. Red light blinking. Steady. Patient. Dawson turned and looked at it. His mouth fell open slightly. He hadn't thought about it. Not once. In 30 minutes of humiliating a man in front of his entire town, he hadn't once considered that a camera was recording every word. Pemberton hadn't turned it off either. Dawson looked at the camera, then at the 12 witnesses sitting at their tables, then at Brenda, still holding her phone behind the counter, then at his deputies. Sheffer pressed against the far wall, Barnes standing at the door staring at his own shoes. Everyone was already somewhere else. He just hadn't realized it yet. "I was doing my job." His voice barely held together. Miles closed his notebook, set the pen down, looked at Dawson with the same steady gaze he'd had from the very first moment. "No, Sheriff. You were doing exactly what I came here to investigate." Dawson opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The most powerful man in Harlan Falls couldn't figure out where to put his hands. 45 minutes later, 2 unmarked sedans pulled into the gravel lot of Pemberton's diner. Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Regional Office. An hour after that, 2 more vehicles. FBI Atlanta Field Office. Pemberton's diner, the place where people came for eggs and gossip and Brenda's biscuits, was suddenly full of people who outranked every badge in the county. GBI agents secured the security camera footage first. Then they sealed the diner as a scene. Interviewed witnesses one by one in the parking lot. The trucker, the retirees, the mother and her daughter. The man in the John Deere cap who'd watched the whole thing without saying a word. They pulled Barnes aside. He cooperated immediately, spoke fast, like a man who'd been holding his breath underwater and finally broke the surface. The warrantless car search, the fabricated marijuana, the orders he knew were wrong. All of it, everything. Sheffer tried a different approach. Stuck with Dawson's version, routine stop, suspicious behavior, reasonable suspicion. He made it about 4 minutes before the GBI agent across from him opened a folder, set a printed copy of Miles's federal credentials on the table, and asked him to try again. Sheffer crumbled in under a minute. AUSA. Catherine Stills arrived personally from Atlanta by late afternoon. She'd been building a preliminary file on Harlan County for months based on those 2 earlier complaints. She hadn't expected the case to build itself in a single morning. She walked into the diner, surveyed the broken plates still on the floor. The spilled coffee dried to a brown stain on the booth, the security camera still blinking red. She looked at Miles. He nodded. She nodded back. Nothing else needed to be said. By sundown, the county commissioner had been called. The conversation was short. Earl Dawson was placed on indefinite administrative suspension pending a federal investigation. His badge was collected in the diner parking lot. Then, his service weapon. Then, his keys. One by one. In front of a news camera that Brenda's friend from the regional station had sent the moment Brenda called her. Dawson handed over each item without a word. No mirrored aviators, no puffed chest, no campaign voice. The man who had walked into Pemberton's diner that morning like he owned the county walked out of the parking lot with nothing. Got in his truck, pulled out of the gravel lot, and drove away in the same silence he had forced on every person he'd ever bullied in that town. The story didn't end in that parking lot. Within 72 hours, the DOJ opened a full pattern and practice investigation into the Harlan County Sheriff's Department. Not a review, a full federal investigation with subpoena power. Miles had been sent to observe. He came back as evidence. But it was what happened next that cracked the whole thing open. A local pastor shared the story at Sunday service. By Monday, 2 people called the DOJ. By Friday, 4 more. By month's end, 14. 14 complaints. All black residents. All the same pattern, same playbook, same man. A mechanic pulled over 3 times in 2 months. Searched each time. Never charged. A mother handcuffed on her porch in front of her children over tall grass. A 16-year-old held in a cruiser for 40 minutes walking home from school in his uniform. Different details, identical bones, pretextual stops, fabricated justification, humiliation, always targeting black residents. Data confirmed it. 4 times more stops of black drivers per capita over 3 years. Not a coincidence, a system. Sheffer explained how that system worked. Charged separately with conspiracy, facing 8 to 12 years, he took the cooperation deal in 48 hours. Years of direct instructions from Dawson. Find a reason was the phrase Dawson used most. Broken taillight, air freshener on the mirror, anything. Sheffer named dates, victims, and direct quotes. Dawson wanted to keep certain people from getting comfortable. His exact words. A USA Catherine Stills took everything to a federal grand jury. Indictment came down on a Thursday. Charges: deprivation of rights under color of law, multiple counts. Witness intimidation, 3 phone calls to Brenda after suspension, all recorded. Conspiracy to fabricate probable cause. Dawson was arrested at 6 in the morning. 2 FBI agents. Handcuffs. His wife watching from the porch. Perp walked past 3 cameras. The image ran on every network by noon. Same cuffs, same walk, same silence. Everything he'd done to others, done to him. The trial lasted 9 days. Defense strategy. Honest mistakes. Overzealous policing. A dedicated lawman who sometimes crossed the line. Regrettable but not criminal. The jury didn't buy it. Miles took the stand on day 3, described every detail with the same composure from the diner. The cockroach comment, The fabricated marijuana, the cuffs, never raised his voice, laid out facts like a bricklayer, one at a time, level, impossible to knock down.
Brenda testified on day 5.
The escalation, the silence, the badge on the floor, the plates crashing. Her voice broke once, when they asked why she called. I thought about my grandson, Caleb. He's 3.5, and I thought, if he walks into the wrong diner in the wrong town someday, who picks up the phone? Who doesn't just look away? Barnes testified about the warrantless search and the fear that kept him silent. Sheffer filled an entire day. Names, dates, direct quotes, years of instructions. A DOJ data analyst presented the numbers. Stop rates, search rates, arrest rates, broken down by race. Charts that turned a pattern into proof. The jury deliberated 6 hours. Guilty. All counts. Judge Harold Whitfield, sentencing. 8 years federal prison. 3 additional years witness intimidation consecutive. Lifetime ban from law enforcement. Full forfeiture of pension. Before reading the sentence, Whitfield looked at Dawson. The badge you wore was entrusted to you by every citizen of this county. Not some. All. You weaponized that trust against the people you swore to protect. This court cannot undo the damage, but it can ensure you never cause it again. They let him out in handcuffs, past the gallery, past the cameras, past 14 people who had finally been heard. Same walk, same metal on his wrists. But this time, Earl Dawson was the one who didn't belong. 6 months after the verdict, Harlan County signed a consent decree with the United States Department of Justice. The terms were non-negotiable. Mandatory body cameras for every officer on every shift. A civilian oversight board with subpoena power. Half its members appointed by community organizations, not the county commission. De-escalation training every 90 days. Bias audits conducted by an independent firm every 6 months, with results published publicly. The department that Earl Dawson had run like a personal fiefdom was rebuilt from the ground up. Not by choice, by order. A new sheriff was elected that November. First contested election in 12 years. The winner, a 41-year-old former state trooper, ran on a single promise: accountability. She won by 11 points. Brenda Holloway received a DOJ Civilian Courage Commendation in a small ceremony at the federal courthouse in Atlanta. No cameras, no speeches, just a room with a few officials and a framed certificate. A reporter from the regional station caught up with her afterward. Asked her why she made the call that day. Brenda thought about it for a second. Then she said, "I didn't do anything brave. Brave is what that man did sitting in that booth for 30 minutes while everyone else, including me, just watched." She paused. "I picked up a phone, that's all. 30 seconds earlier and maybe I would have done nothing. But I saw that badge and I thought about Caleb, and I picked up the phone." She went back to Pemberton's diner the next morning. Same apron, same coffee pot, same booth by the window. But something had changed. Ray Pemberton had taken Dawson's photo down from behind the register. The nail hole was still there. In its place, a new frame. Brenda holding her commendation, surrounded by regulars, smiling the same warm smile she gave every customer who walked through the door. Miles Anderson did not attend the ceremony. He did not give interviews. He did not write an op-ed or appear on a podcast or post a single word on social media. He was already in another town, another diner, another notebook. Colleagues at the DOJ described him the same way they always had. The quietest person in the loudest rooms. The man who never raised his voice because he never needed to. Somewhere in America, on some other Tuesday morning, a man like Miles Anderson is sitting in a booth by a window, writing in a notebook, eating pancakes, watching, listening. And somewhere, a man like Earl Dawson is about to make the worst mistake of his life. So let me ask you this. If you were sitting in that diner, watching a man get called a cockroach, get slammed into a table, get cuffed for the crime of eating breakfast, would you have said something? Or would you have been one of the 12 who looked away? Drop your answer in the comments. I don't want the easy answer. I want the honest one. And if this story made you feel something, if it sat in your chest a little heavier than you expected, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Because stories like this don't change anything sitting in one person's head. They change things when they move. Hit subscribe if you're here for stories that don't look away from the hard stuff. Tap that bell so you don't miss the next one. Because here's what I believe. Every time we tell a story like this, we shine a little more light into the places people would rather keep dark. And that light, it adds up.